Hey everyone. I think I ended up interacting more last time about measurements than of the episode itself, so I'm never gonna spotlight that again. And yet, a lot of things happened last time. There was a little bit of theory crafting as to how things work with my version of Jinchuriki. However, unfortunately, you'll just have to wait until we see more of that. This is the kind of information that's meant to be drip-fed. Also, in the episodes to come, as you've followed along, we'll be coming to Iwa, the ninja capital of the Land of Earth. In keeping with the surrounding environment, I'm using Boruto's version of the city rather than Naruto's version. The reason why is Naruto's version certainly seems bleak. There are very few shots of this city from Naruto, so it's hard to get a grasp of how it's structured. But the Boruto version, we have a full picture, so I can more easily describe a narrative around that. I don't want to simply tack on random information about the Naruto version of the city, because unfortunately my head just won't allow that. Also, the Boruto version just looks better both strategically and economically. It just makes more sense. I'll put in some pictures of both so you can see what I mean. The Naruto version just looks like Suna, but made out of rock instead of sand. Kind of boring in that regard. Anyway, explanations aside, let's jump into the episode. Standing at the edge of a cliff with a backdrop of smoke and smoldering embers, Orochimaru surveys what's to come. Various Chunin are diligently working behind, scavenging what they can from the razed village. They've finally passed the point where natural vegetation occurs, so they need to take what food they can from any source they can find. The few wounded that aren't crippled enough to require Tsunade's aid rest aside the main party. And due to Kurenai's meeting with Orochimaru, it proved that Baki had a successful siege of the coastal villages, and was likely waiting for the signal to besiege the city from its opposite side. This particular mountain village is a double-edged sword for Orochimaru. The smoke rising from its ruin would be clearly visible for any guards in Iwa. On the other hand, the elevation difference gives Orochimaru a rare advantage to see inside the city. Its high walls would make such a look otherwise impossible. The Land of Earth kept their cards very close to the chest, so little was known about the layout of its villages. It was sheer luck that the kid pointed out a nearly invisible path that led up to the mountains. Basically leashed to his side since being dropped off by Kurenai, Shikamaru remarks that this city is so much better defended than Konoha. Even its walls are at least 3 times taller and much thicker than Konoha's. Shikamaru would not be surprised if the walls themselves were integral to the infrastructure of the city. Orochimaru sniffs at the comment, returning his gaze to the city's inner workings. Continuing, Shikamaru points out that the very environment surrounding the city for at least 100 kilometers was basically inhospitable. Nothing grew here in the wilds. From their vantage point, the land below looked pockmarked, covered in tens of thousands of holes and caves of various sizes. With the element of surprise, Orochimaru thought to himself, they could likely have found a cave that actually just led under the ground and into the city proper. Not something they could take advantage of now. Shikamaru also cites the Gobi as an ongoing threat to everyone caught in its attack. Chuckling, Orochimaru continues to think to himself the hilarity of a boy like Shikamaru who fell victim to the mist at its weakest, attempting to cite it as a threat. Had Shikamaru been with the main army, he most certainly would have been killed. Muttering under his breath, Orochimaru notes that Iwa clearly has a rigorous irrigation system for its citizens, where the landscape is mired by a lifeless gray rock in all directions. The city's edge and innards flourishes with bright green. Just transporting the soil isn't enough to maintain life here. It's also very cold. The water would not quite turn to ice even in the night, but the nearly constant mountain winds had a permanent bite that left everyone in the Leaf Party wanting an additional layer of warmth. Nothing here was conducive to life, yet they somehow made it work in the city. Orochimaru thinks to himself that beyond everything the kid was saying, there was still more. Clearly, the Rock Ninja maintained a far greater advantage in defending than in assaulting. Though Konoha, the town, was easy to attack, it had very strong individual ninja within to defend. Iwa, the town, was hard to attack. By the time they finished their plan of attack, they'd all be hungry and cold and tired. Meanwhile, the ninja within Iwa's walls would be well fed, warm, and fully rested. Everything about this invitation was completely in favor of Iwa. However, if their assault safely gets them behind the walls, then the concerns about fatigue versus not fatigued virtually goes away. By army strength, Konoha was the better, even after the Gobi's destructive mist turned friend into foe. In regards to their colder environment, Shikamaru supposes that the walls might themselves act as insulators. It's probably far warmer inside than out. There are trees that are maintained on the edge of the city, beyond the walls. Shikamaru thinks they might just be traps. They could be a resilient strain of tree, but Shikamaru is nonetheless suspicious of them. Finally turning his attention to the kid, Orochimaru glares at Shikamaru for one long, silent minute. He tells Shikamaru that he doesn't much care for the Nara clan. Though Shikamaru's father has proven to have the wit of 100 ninja combined, that doesn't make up for their shortcomings. But by that same token, Orochimaru generally dislikes any ninja that withholds any particular knowledge of jutsu. Hiden techniques are treasured far more than they ever should be. To claim a stake in a particular jutsu, instead of sharing that power, makes sense only for the weak. But these are the supposed great clans of Konoha. There's nothing great about using a selfish coward's power. And Shadow Style itself is so incredibly rare that there shouldn't be an entire clan that covets a particularly useful aspect of it. The expansion jutsu of the Akamichi clan is particularly useless, as it is replicable, perhaps not on a 1-to-1 scale, but close enough that they're essentially useless as a unique power. He goes on to list the Yamanaka clan particularly, who've developed a technique that no one else in the world can do, and they're keeping it to themselves. Does it not make the most sense to disseminate this kind of information, at the very least to your Hokage, or better yet, fellow ninja? Imagine someone with even an ounce of chakra using the shadow jutsu the way the weak Nara clan attempt to wield it. Though Shikamaru understands that Orochimaru isn't out to attack him directly, he still feels the sting of insults on his family. He's not about to challenge a Sannin on the matter, however, and pushes past it. After Orochimaru finally finishes his rant, Shikamaru asks him what his take is on Kekkei Genkai, if he has such a disgust for Hiden abilities. Silent for a while, Orochimaru says that there's a way around any secret. Hiden techniques are pretty complex to figure out, but once cracked, they're as easy as any other jutsu to use. Kekkei Genkai, meanwhile, can still be taken. If Orochimaru wanted the Sharingan, he could just pluck them from an Uchiha's head and enjoy nearly the same effects. Nodding to the village below, he tells Shikamaru that Unoki, the Tsuchikage of Iwa, holds a power that technically belongs to both categories of Kekkei Genkai and Hiden. Unoki's is what's called a Kekkei Tota, and is quite possibly the most complex jutsu known to mankind at the moment. It was taught to him by his predecessor. That's not supposed to be possible for Kekkei Tota, but it suggests that other Kekkei Genkai are also teachable, just along a far more complex path than any Hiden technique could ever hope to be. Contrary to their name, Kekkei Genkai curiously don't always seem to be bound by blood. It's been several days since the Rock Ninja attempted their ridiculous attack on Konoha. Minato and his trusty Anbu have since fully recovered from the assault and have returned to their daily procedures. In these times of war, the perimeter guards have been instructed to keep the village gates closed at all times. All times except for 30 minutes in the morning for traders, hunters, farmers, and any other Leaf citizen to get in or out. However, this is a calm morning, like most others. The sun has risen over the walls and subsequently bathed everyone in its warmth. But there is no wind, and the weary keep to the shade to avoid overheating. And on this particular day, there is an immediate, noticeable gust, a wicked churning of the air that raises concerns for the Anbu at the gates. He turns to follow the direction of the gust and notices a quick flash of red, but in the next moment, nothing's amiss. There's no dust in the air from getting kicked up, no peculiar sounds, and no injuries to anyone nearby. The gust has vanished like a wisp. Nevertheless, he leaps into the air and signals fellow Anbu, whose zones share a border with his, that there might be someone suspicious in the village. Attempting to track the trajectory of this would-be intruder, the Anbu further into the village notice nothing astray or wrong anywhere. In the alleys between stores, there's a weird smear of white that's there and gone in as fast as a blink. Sheets on clotheslines lie still and suddenly flap from an invisible anomaly. The sensor Anbu notice a prickle, too weak to locate, but peculiar enough to notice. A window slides open, and Minato massages the bridge of his nose. Taking a moment to catch his breath, Lord Jiraiya tells Minato that he came as quickly as he could. Looking up from his work, Minato studies his old teacher. No injuries or bloodstains on his clothes. Jiraiya was known to never carry a toolkit with him, so there wasn't anything odd that one was missing. There were twigs and leaves that had caught in Jiraiya's hair from the rushed return. He tells Minato that he's answered the emergency summons. Blinking, Minato silently continues to appraise his old master. Jiraiya takes this silence to explain that they've already found a couple leads. However, there are so many underworld organizations in the Land of Rain that they can't make a move in any direction without angering someone. They found proof of a Akatsuki presence there, and it seems that Hanzo is still very much in charge of the country, as dysfunctional as it is. Waiting for a break in Jiraiya's report, Minato tells him that he never issued any emergency summons. This draws obvious confusion on Jiraiya's face. It was certainly peculiar, though, Minato explains to him, that Jiraiya chose to return on the day of Danzo's second trial by the Uchiha. Unsure of what Minato was suggesting, Jiraiya shakes his head. They received a scroll in the night by Bird with Konoha's cipher. Given where his team was in the Land of Rain, Jiraiya figured no one would have any idea where he was at the time. No one except for Minato. How else would the Bird have found him? From his layers of robes, Jiraiya pulls out the tiny scroll that had been attached to the bird's leg and presented it to Minato. Fingering the message, Minato carefully unravels it. Just as Jiraiya explained, it was an emergency summons for him to return, and indeed, it was Minato's own writing. Frowning, Minato hands the note back to Jiraiya and leans back in his chair, relaxing. With a great sigh, Minato tells Jiraiya that one of two things have happened. Either Jiraiya's team is dead now, or one of them is going to be assassinated today. Stumbling over his words, Jiraiya asks how Minato got to that conclusion. Pointing at the scroll, Minato tells Jiraiya that it is his handwriting. The only people he could think of that could replicate his handwriting so precisely would be people with particularly strong visual prowess. But the Hyuga were loyal to a fault. Jiraiya lifts his hands up and asks if one of them's meant to be assassinated, why would the note bring Jiraiya home to unite them? There's not a force in the world that could kill both of them working together. Minato asks him calmly, what else could it be? He certainly wasn't afraid of his own conclusion. But if Jiraiya was so sure that they weren't going to be assassinated, then the other option must be true. At that point, why would anyone feel the need to kill 3 Jonin assisting the Sannin and not the other way around? Unfortunately, if Jiraiya was discovered and identified, he'd be much easier to kill out in the middle of nowhere than in the safety of Konoha. So that suggests that at least one person on the assigned team for Jiraiya was a spy. Ko Hyuga, Shikaku Nara, or Kabuto Yakushi. 2 of them belonged to a major clan. One of them was a personal assistant to Tsunade. Kabuto's been helping at the hospital since he was a youngster, It didn't track that he'd suddenly turned coat. However, if assassination was out of the question, then there'd have to be a traitor amongst the team. And if that's the case, Kabuto's unfortunately the biggest question mark. Folding his arms behind his back, Minato swivels in his chair so he can look outside and ponder the present circumstances. A knock comes from the door to Minato's office. Before he can give them the go-ahead to come in, they let themselves in. 3 of the Uchiha leaders enter the room. Due to the Uchiha massacre, there are very few of the older generation of Uchiha left. That meant that their new leaders were barely adults themselves. The best of the Uchiha that Minato knew was an Anbu, until Shisui killed him during the Chunin exams. He didn't think that someone of even his skill level would be accepted by the current Uchiha clan. None of these leaders had made names for themselves in the village either, as ninja or even to stir the pot in their restlessness. Fugaku was so much more of a leader than these 3 combined, unfortunately. The mighty Uchiha clan had certainly fallen far. Minato's musings still when out from behind the 3 Uchiha men, Danzo emerges. Crooking his head, Jiraiya asks the Uchiha men why Danzo's not in his cell, but the men ignore him. Danzo tells Minato that the Uchiha have declared him innocent from all his past crimes. Glancing at Jiraiya, Minato now knows the answer to their riddle. Playing innocent, Minato tells Danzo that the trial hasn't started yet. As such, he'll have some Anbu return him to his cell until then. Danzo assures Minato that the Uchiha have fully forgiven him, so the trial would both be a farce and a waste of everyone's time. In the meantime, they have some work to do to make sure Konoha remains secure through this war, and Danzo is fully willing to help Minato in any way he can. Minato squints at Danzo and asks how he was freed. Was he suggesting that the Uchiha broke into the area that his cell was and just break him out illegally to then forgive him? Nodding, Danzo tells him that there was no illegal activity. The guard gave them the keys of his own volition. And the cherry on the cake, the Uchiha even offered him a Sharingan eye as a peace offering. While explaining this, Danzo removes the bandages on his head to reveal his Sharingan eye. However, Minato already knew that he had one Sharingan eye. Where did the second one go? He tells Minato that he doesn't understand what has happened in his own village, despite boasting such a wide-range, powerful sensory ability. Grimacing, Minato tells the Uchiha that if they can't wait for the trial, then he'll have to arrest them as well for the jailbreak. As he lays down the law, all of their eyes shift into active Sharingan. Minato notices that one of them doesn't even have 3 Tomo in each eye yet. Even young Sasuke, with fewer Tomo, has a stronger, more keen Sharingan than them. This really is a shame, Minato says flatly, lifting his feet to rest on his table, illustrating the difference in their ability, foretelling the outcome of the fight that has not yet begun. The Senju-fueled reign comes to an end today, Danzo tells him, stamping his cane on the ground for his dwindled Root Anbu and Uchiha ninja to shatter through all the office's windows. And that's the end of today's episode. I'm getting really good at these cliffhangers. Maybe that's my biggest strength. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Lots of fun mysteries here, as always. Who summoned Jiraiya back to Konoha? Why are Danzo and the Uchiha suddenly aligned? Why are all the Uchiha ninjas still in town and not partaking in the war? Is Jiraiya's team in trouble? Are we laying siege to Iwa next time? Will the Konoha 9 reunite for said siege? Why is Hanzo still alive? How's my guy doing? Where's Kiba? I hope everyone enjoyed the weird conversation between Orochimaru and Shikamaru. Orochimaru might be an ambiguously good guy, but he's still a jerk, so I try to make sure in every conversation he has with anyone that this still comes across properly. He still loves the idea of learning and harnessing all jutsu, and has understandable frustrations with the system of secret, family-made jutsu. That's like if in chess there was a particular move that only one player could perform, and everyone else was just not allowed to. Of course it feels unfair, even if the move itself is exceptionally weak. Off the back of the exciting Jinchuriki episode, I hope everyone was okay with a return to simple dialogues between others that we haven't seen for a while. Until next time, the sky's the limit.